Welcome back! My name is ballerscuba. This is Video Games Over Time. We are still in 1981, and today we're going to talk about Kaboom. The story of Kaboom takes us to Activision. We briefly talked about the creation of Activision in 1979. Activision was founded by Atari employees who were upset by the lack of recognition for their work. The name is a portmanteau of active and television. Activision started by creating games for the Atari VCS. This was the first time that one company would create games for another company's console. To this point, all console games for all consoles that we have discussed were either created by the same company that manufactured the console, or by a company that was paid by the console's manufacturer to create the game. Atari was not happy about this and would file several lawsuits, claiming that Activision had stolen Atari's intellectual property. In defiance of the lawsuits, however, these so-called third-party console games were available on the market. Activision released 6 games for the Atari VCS in 1980, all sports and board games that achieved little to middling success on the market. It was in 1981 that Activision released a game that would bring them some real success. That game was Kaboom. Kaboom was designed by Larry Kaplan, with David Crane helping with the coding. Both men were co-founders of Activision. Larry Kaplan was initially looking to create a version of Avalanche for the Atari VCS. Avalanche was released by Atari for the arcades in 1978. However, the game proved difficult to program for the console, so some changes were made to the game. The boulders falling off the mountain became bombs being dropped by a man known as the Mad Bomber. The player's goal is, using a paddle controller, to catch all the bombs that the Mad Bomber drops before they reach the bottom of the screen. The Mad Bomber will drop the bombs in short bursts that create the game's levels. With each level, the speed of the Mad Bomber increases, up to a possible 8th level. Activision released Kaboom for the Atari VCS in July 1981, despite the pressure and limitations brought by the legal threats from Atari. And that is the backstory to Kaboom. With that now told, it's time to play the game for ourselves. And here we are in the game. Now, just a couple things to talk about before we get underway. Kaboom's not that complicated, but there are a couple things to mention. The first is that I don't have a paddle controller. I'll be using a mouse to kind of replace that. I feel that's going to give me the best kind of replication of what it's like to use a paddle controller, at least compared with the other options that are available to me. So I'm going to be using a mouse for this. It's not going to affect the gameplay all that much, but just so you know. Second, there are 2 game modes to the game. There are technically 2 games in Kaboom. You can either play it 1 person or 2 person. If you're playing the 2-person version of Kaboom, that just means that player 1 goes, and then when they lose, player 2 goes, and then it goes back and forth. So ultimately, there's just the 1 game. With those 2 things said, let's get underway. I'm going to go ahead and hit the start button here because we're on game mode 1, which means 1 player. I have my control things right here. I'm going to catch me some bombs. The Mad Bomber automatically looks upset and sad. We will see if that changes as time goes on. I'm probably not going to get enough points to get the higher thing. We'll talk about that as we continue. Let's just get started. All right, round 1 is fairly quick and simple. 10 bombs, 10 points. We're ready to move on to something a little bit more difficult. As you can see, he starts moving a little bit faster. And he drops way more bombs. So we're up to 50 points now. He still looks sad. All right, now he's really motoring. I have to actually concentrate for this one. All right, 140 points. I'm doing pretty well. That's through level 3, and I'm considering that pretty good. I usually struggle here with Level 4. All right, we got through 300 points. Level 5, I don't have too much hopes that I can get through it. I'm just not that good at this game. But I'm going to try. There's so many bombs. Yeah, at some point I'm just kind of sweeping across and hoping for the best. All right, so I lost 1 life, which means that I'm pretty much doomed from this point forward. They got rid of my third paddle, I guess. The third catcher here. We do go back a bit, but yeah, without that third one, it becomes so much more difficult to catch things. At least I feel that way. All right, 511 points. Yeah, there's only so much I can do with 1 or 2 paddles. And now he's happy. Now he's happy. All right, I should mention that if you get a certain amount of points, good things start happening. 3,000 is kind of the first one. If you got 3,000 points back in the day, you could submit a picture of your score, and they would give you, I believe, a button that said that you were, great at the game. And they said that there was something special that would happen at 10,000 points. I am not going to get 10,000 points. I'm probably not even going to get 3,000 points. But what happens at 10,000 points is that the Mad Bomber kind of always looks surprised whenever you catch a bomb when you get to 10,000 points. That's the surprise that they were talking about. And that's pretty much it to Kaboom. Very straightforward game. Not much complexity, I would say, to it. It's difficult, don't get me wrong. It requires my concentration. But it's not a complex game. It is straightforward. All right, 300 points, and then... Yeah, I try. I do try. But, at some point, there's only so much I can do. Yeah, I missed that one. I was hoping to get it on the swing over, but didn't quite happen. And then here, I'm just screwed. About 500 points again. A little bit less than last time, but that's okay. We'll try at least one more time here. See if I can better my first score. People have actually gotten the max score in this game before. The max score is 99,999. They even have a time for how long it actually takes to get there. People have done it. So there's not necessarily a high score for this game. There's a max score, and many people have gotten it. So that's something to achieve for if you really like the game. I personally am not good enough at the game to even think about doing that, and this is my worst run so far. But maybe I can do something good here. 400, probably not going to get to 500 again. Nope. 441. All right, we'll do one more here. One more run. See what I can do. Yeah, the game is very easy to understand. Very cut and dry. This is what's happening. This is what you need to do. And for a home console game of the time, that's probably what was needed. Alright, there we go. Yeah, at some point, my mind just starts lapsing playing this game for a while. And I just don't play as well. Yeah, I have a very limited lifespan on this game before I need to take a break. And I'm not saying that it's anything about the game's fault. That's just the way that I end up playing this game. Is I start out pretty strong and then it just kind of teeters off after that. And I'm not able to concentrate as well on it. But that is the game. So with the game now played, it's time to talk about how the game holds up today. Playing the game today, the game is fun, I would say in short bursts. I did not play the game all that long. Like I said, I tend to be good at the beginning of the play session, and I just kind of steadily get worse and worse. The game does require a large amount of attention, just an intense concentration and intense focus on the game that I think is difficult for most people to sustain long term. It is very fast-paced, action-oriented, and that is fun. But like I said, for me, it's in short bursts. It's not necessarily a game that I think, oh, I'm going to play some Kaboom today. It's something that is good, but it doesn't necessarily hold up. I think that there are other games out there that achieve the same type of gameplay with better results, with something that feels like I'm progressing more other than just catching bombs over and over and over again. At the time, I would say the graphics, though, are really nice. You can actually tell that these are bombs. You can actually tell that that is a person, that it's actually a criminal. You can tell that. You can tell that it's the Mad Bomber. That's something that didn't really exist on consoles at the time. Nothing that clear cut, at least. You could sometimes tell when you were looking at a sprite what it was supposed to be, but nothing as clear as this game has been. Those were very clearly bombs. Those were very clear. That was very clearly a person at the top. I'm still not entirely sure what my baskets were at the bottom, but considering that they were almost a direct port from Avalanche, it kind of makes sense that I wouldn't understand those still. But overall, the graphics, I would say, are pretty good. The sound is also pretty good. You could actually hear explosions when they happen. That's not always the case with games of this age. I would say that catching it was kind of an interesting sound, but it made sense at the time, but doesn't necessarily make sense now. In terms of the gameplay, it is, I would say, addictive to some extent, but not for me personally. I know a lot of people do play the game and get addicted to it, but for me, it doesn't necessarily have that quality to it. And then in terms of replayability, I mean, it happens so fast that you're going to want to play the game over and over again. Just playing one session and playing for, 30 seconds is probably not going to do it for you. But is this a game that I would want to come back to time and time again long term? Probably not. So it's a game that I think is fun, especially in a short burst, but in terms of coming back to it or reliving it over and over again, I don't think that this is a game that holds up that well in that regard. But the game is definitely one that is worth playing. And that's my modern take on the game. Kaboom proved to be very popular for the Atari VCS. It would go on to sell 1 million copies for Activision, making the game one of the most popular games for the console. The critics also liked the game. The game was praised not only for its fast-paced gameplay, but also for its graphics and sound. The game would launch Activision to the forefront of console game developers. Kaboom would be one of 6 games that Activision would release for the Atari VCS in 1981. Although Kaboom was by far the most successful. We will, of course, hear from Activision again as we continue. Larry Kaplan would continue to work in the video game industry, but would not take the lead in the creation of another video game again. Larry Kaplan would leave Activision in 1982, and we will most likely not hear from him again. David Crane, on the other hand, would continue to work on video game development at Activision, and we will hear from David Crane again. And that will do it for the story of Kaboom for now. My name is ballerscuba. This has been Video Games Over Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video when we'll make our getaway.